Title: The Shadow That Faded. Chapter 1: Sunlight on Wooden Desks. It began soft like sunlight filtering through fresh spring leaves, like the first breath of a morning that holds no sharpness, no bite, no knowledge of storms to come. We were 17 when we sat side by side for the very first time, in the back row of room 3B at Northwood High, located in Bramblehold, a quiet, mist-kissed city tucked between rolling heather-covered hills and a wide steel-gray ocean that roared softly against jagged rocks. His name was Kalen Voss. Even then, he stood out. He was tall for his age, broad-shouldered, though still carrying the lean softness of youth. He had hair the color of dark amber, eyes a deep, warm hazel, and a smile that reached his eyes before it ever touched his lips. He was popular, capable, the kind of boy teachers liked, and others naturally gravitated toward. Mine is Leon Thorne. I was slimmer, quieter, with lighter hair and eyes the gray-blue of a cloudy sky. I was the observer, the one who sat quietly and watched the world turn, rarely speaking unless spoken to, content to remain in the softer shadows of the room. For weeks we barely spoke. Then, one rainy afternoon, I dropped my books, papers, and sketches scattering everywhere across the wet floor of the hallway. Before I could kneel, he was there, gathering them up, his large hands careful not to crease my drawings. "These are really good," he said, looking at a sketch I had done of the old lighthouse at the edge of town. He looked up at me, and for a moment, the noise of the school seemed to fade away. "I'm Keelan, Elian," I replied, my voice quieter than I intended. From that day on, he was there. And what followed was nearly a year of him courting me slow, patient, and incredibly sweet. He never rushed me. He never demanded anything I wasn't ready to give. Every morning, Kalen waited by the tall iron gates, regardless of weather. If the sun shone, he leaned against the stone pillar. If it rained, he stood under his umbrella and always held it higher over me than himself, so his own shoulder would be soaked by the time we reached the building. We walked the 20-minute journey together, talking about everything and nothing constellations, history, the way the clouds moved over the sea. During breaks, he would find me. He shared his apple or his bread because he noticed I often brought very little food. In the afternoons, he walked me home, even though his house was in the opposite direction, across the river bridge. He would linger at my wooden gate, hands deep in his pockets, just talking until my mother called me inside. Sometimes he would bring small things, a smooth stone found on the beach, a pressed flower from the hillside, a note slipped into my textbook written in his bold, slanted handwriting, thinking of you, or hope your day is bright. I was shy, unsure how someone so bright and lively could be so interested in someone like me. But Kalen was consistent. For 10 months, he showed me that I was worth waiting for. It was late autumn when we sat on the wooden bench overlooking the water, the place that would become ours, and he took a breath that seemed too big for his chest. "Elian," he said, turning toward me completely, his knees almost touching mine. "I like you. More than I have ever liked anyone. I wanted to be with you properly. I want to be the one who walks you home, always. The one you share everything with, if you'll let me." My heart raced so fast I thought you might hear it. I looked at his earnest face, the warmth radiating from him like a hearth fire. "I'd like that," I whispered, smiling until my cheeks hurt, very much. He reached out then, slowly, and took my hands in his. His skin was warm, slightly rough, helped from his father with woodwork, and it felt like the safest place on earth. "Then I promise you," he said softly, making a vow he believed with his whole heart, "I will spend every day showing you that you are the best thing that ever happened to me. One day, I'm going to build us a life. A place where we belong completely. Just wait and see. Everything I do. It will be for you." Chapter 2. Growing side by side. From that moment, we were inseparable. We moved through the years as if woven together. We finished our final years of school, helping each other through difficult subjects, staying late in the library, or studying by candlelight at each other's houses when electricity was scarce. We were young and had very little money, but we were rich in time and affection. When we enrolled at Bramblehold Technical College, we chose similar courses. He focused on engineering and structure, while I leaned toward design and drafting, so our schedules aligned perfectly. We shared textbooks, walked to class with our shoulders brushing, and then spent our free hours exploring the coastline or sitting in the park, dreaming big dreams. "You'll design beautiful buildings," Kalen would say, tracing lines on my sketches with his finger. "And I'll build them. We'll make a mark on this place together." When we graduated, we applied to the same firm, Hillwood Engineering and Design. It was a respectable company housed in a gray stone building near the center of town. We started at the very bottom, running errands, organizing files, weeping workshops, learning the business from the ground up. We worked hard, side by side, arriving early and leaving late. Colleagues knew us as a pair quite alien and sturdy, ambitious Kalen. Even tired, even covered in dust or ink, we found joy in it. At the end of every shift, we would walk out together, and he would always reach for my hand, intertwining our fingers as we walked toward whatever small room we were renting at the time. After 2 years of saving every coin we could spare eating simple meals, rarely buying new clothes, we finally had enough for a place of our own. It was a second-floor apartment above a bakery on Willow Lane. It was small, one bedroom, a sitting room, and the kitchen barely large enough for two people to turn around in. The paint was peeling, the floorboards creaked loudly, and the wind whistled slightly around the window frames, but it was ours. The day we moved in, we carried boxes up the stairs, laughing breathlessly. We spent the evening sitting on the bare floor, wrapped in a single blanket, drinking tea from chipped cups, watching the sun dip below the rooftops and the gas lamps flicker to life below. Home, Kalen said, looking around, then at me. We're finally home, Elian. Those were the golden years. We filled that space with everything we were. We hung curtains we chose together. We stacked books we had read side by side. In the kitchen, we tried to cook meals we had never made before. Soups too salty, bread that didn't rise, and we would laugh until our ribs ached over our failures. We had a window seat that looked out over the lane and toward the distant sea. On weekends, we would sit there for hours, wrapped in blankets, reading or talking or simply leaning against one another in comfortable silence. At night, we fell asleep tangled together, warm and safe, and woke the same way. Kalen was kind, affectionate, and attentive. He remembered the way I liked my tea. He knew when I was tired before I said so, and he always made sure I felt seen and valued. He told me he loved me every single day, sometimes, many times a day, with words, with the way he looked at me like I held the universe inside me. For a long time, I believed nothing could ever change this. I thought we had found a rhythm that would last forever, a soft warmth that no winter could ever freeze. Chapter 3. The distance creeps in. Time moved forward, and with it came progress. Kellen's talent and dedication did not go unnoticed. He was reliable, intelligent, and driven. Projects were entrusted to him that were usually given to much older men. He worked longer hours, took on more responsibility, and his name began appearing on reports and blueprints. Then came the day that should have been the happiest of our working lives. He came home earlier than usual, his face glowing with excitement and pride. He swept me up into his arms and spun me around the small hallway. Elian, they promoted me, head of operations. I was overjoyed for him. I hugged him tight, kissing his cheek and his forehead, telling him how proud I was, how well he deserved it. We celebrated that night with a special meal and a bottle of wine we had saved for a special occasion. We talked about the raise that would come, the better furniture we could buy, the possibility of moving to a bigger place one day. Neither of us knew then that this moment was the beginning of the slow drift that would pull us apart. The changes were subtle at first, so faint that I told myself I was being silly or overly sensitive. He began leaving before I woke up in the mornings. There was no longer a shared breakfast, no quiet conversation before the day began. He would leave a note, have a good day, be back late. When he did return in the evenings, he was exhausted, shoulders hunched, eyes heavy, mind still miles away in meetings or problem solving. He would sit at the small dining table with papers spread out in chaotic piles, frowning deeply as he scribbled notes. Did you have a good day? I would ask, placing a plate of warm food near his elbow. Oh yes. Fine, he would answer, without lifting his eyes from the diagrams. Lots to do. Slowly, the replies grew shorter. He stopped asking about my work, about what I had done while he was gone, about my thoughts or feelings. If I tried to sit beside him or lean my head against his shoulder, he would shift slightly, saying he needed space to think, or that he was too stiff to be touched right now. I missed the warmth of him. I missed the way he used to seek me out the moment he walked through the door. One evening, I gathered my courage and spoke up. Kalen, it feels like I hardly see you anymore. Even when you are here, you aren't really here. He sighed, a long, heavy sound of someone burdened beyond measure. He put down his pen and finally looked at me, but his expression was one of frustration rather than understanding. Elian, please don't make this harder than it is. This promotion is a big step. There is so much pressure, so many people counting on me. I have targets to meet and decisions to make. I am doing this for us for our future, remember? So we can have nice things, security, more space. Don't you understand that I have to work hard to provide that? Of course I understand, I said softly, my chest feeling tight. But I don't want things, Kellen. I want you. He shook his head, turning back to his documents. You have me. I'm here, aren't I? You're just being lonely because you have too much time to think. Try to be reasonable. Being told my feelings were unreasonable hurt deeply, but I swallowed the hurt. I told myself he was stressed, that it was temporary, that once he settled into the role, things would go back to how they were done. So I began to try harder. I woke up even earlier to prepare a full breakfast, packing a lunchbox for him with extra treats and little notes written on slips of paper. I love you. You're brilliant. Come home soon. I kept the apartment immaculate, ensuring there was never a speck of dust or a chore left undone. I cooked his favorite meals, waiting by the stove so they would be warm when he finally arrived, even if it meant the food went cold, and I ate alone at midnight. When he came to bed, I would lie close to him, hoping for an embrace or a kind word. More often than not, he would lie rigidly on his back, staring into the darkness, or turn away toward the edge of the mattress. When sleep finally came, the distance between us was wide enough for another person to lie in. Months slipped by. The warmth had completely faded, replaced by a cool politeness that felt colder than outright anger. There were days we lived in the same four walls and exchanged barely 3 sentences. He passed me in the hallway like a stranger passing on a street. He forgot important dates we had always celebrated. He stopped holding my hand entirely. I felt myself shrinking, becoming quieter, fading into the background just to avoid disturbing him. I began to wonder if I was too much, or perhaps not enough, too plain, too quiet, not interesting enough to hold his attention now that he moved in circles of importance and business. And then there was her. Chapter 4, Lies and Whispers. Shortly after his promotion, the company hired a new administrative assistant to support the department. Her name was Marnie Holly. She was sharp, elegant, articulate, and always perfectly dressed. She was assigned specifically to work as Kellen's personal secretary. At first, I thought nothing of it. It made sense he would need help managing his schedule and correspondence. I told myself it was just business, but I began to notice things. He spoke of her often, her efficiency, her intelligence, how helpful she was. He would come home later than ever, explaining they were finishing reports together. One afternoon, I decided to surprise him. I had baked a pie and packed it neatly, walking it over to the office building. When I asked at the front desk, I was directed toward his new office at the end of the hall. The door was slightly ajar. Through the gap, I saw them standing near the large window that overlooked the city. They were much closer than colleagues usually stand. She was laughing, her hand resting lightly on his forearm, and he was smiling, that bright, easy smile I had not seen directed at me in months. He looked relaxed, lighter, younger again. I stepped back, my heart sinking to my stomach, and left without going in. After that, small clues mounted up. A faint, sweet perfume clinging to the lapel of his coat that I did not wear. A reddish stain on a shirt collar that was definitely not mine. Messages arriving late at night that he would read quickly and delete without showing me. I felt sick with doubt and confusion. I wanted to ask him to demand the truth, yet I was terrified that if I spoke it aloud, it would become reality. I did not have to seek her out because she sought me. I received a note asking me to meet her at a tea room across town. Confused and anxious, I went. She sat at a table near the back, composed and polite. As soon as I sat down, she began speaking in soft, honeyed tones that dripped with poison. I thought it was only fair that you should know the truth, she said, folding her hands neatly on the tablecloth. It is painful, I know, but staying in ignorance is worse. Know what? I asked, my voice trembling. Kalen hasn't been truly happy with you for a very long time, she said, her eyes wide with fake sympathy. He feels trapped by history, by the fact that you grew up together. He stays out of duty and pity, nothing more. He is a man now with ambitions and needs you cannot understand or meet. We have been together properly for some weeks now. He was simply too kind to end things himself, hoping you would realize and move on. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Every word felt like a stone thrown through glass. That's not true, I whispered, though my conviction was crumbling. He loves me, does he? She asked gently. Does he show it? Does he say it? Look at how he lives now, Elian. He barely acknowledges you. You are just a memory he hasn't found the courage to put away yet. But I am here now, and I am the one he actually wants. She said it with such certainty, such calm confidence that I began to believe her. I left the tea room in a daze, walking through the streets without seeing them, my mind replaying every cold word, every late night, every empty chair at our table. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was just left over from a younger, simpler time that he had outgrown. I waited for Kalen that night. I waited until the clock struck midnight and the candles burned low. When he finally came in, looking weary and distracted, I stood up from the chair where I had sat for hours. "Who is she to you?" I asked, my voice sounding small and raw in the quiet room. He paused, taking off his coat. "Marnie? She works for me, Elian. You know that?" "I know what she told me," I said, tears finally spilling over. "She told me you are together. She told me you don't love me anymore, that you only stay out of me, pity. Is it true? Have I just been holding you back all this time?" Kellen's expression shifted instantly from fatigue to annoyance, then to anger. His eyes flashed cold and sharp. "You went and spoke to her? You believe the words of a stranger over me? You are being ridiculous. You are insecure and jealous and making things up because you have nothing else to fill your days with. I am not making things up." I cried out, hurt turning to desperation. "Look at us, Kalen. Look at how you treat me. You are never here. You never speak to me. I live right through me. I live here like a ghost. I try so hard to be good enough, to make it warm again, to bring us back. But nothing I do matters to you anymore. If you want to leave, just go. Don't make me stay here wondering what I did wrong. I stay because I made a promise." He shouted back, his voice louder than I had ever heard it. "But sometimes I wonder what happened to the boy I fell in love with. You've become so demanding, so fragile. It's exhausting. Then leave." I screamed, overwhelmed by pain and fear. "If I am such a burden, get out." In a sudden, terrifying movement, he stepped forward and raised his hand. Before I could move or look away, his palm connected hard against my cheek. The force knocked me backward, stumbling until I hit the wall and slid down to the floor. Silence exploded in the room. For a heartbeat, just a heartbeat, he looked horrified. His hand flew to his mouth, his eyes wide and shocked as he realized exactly what he had done. He took a step toward me, his expression crumbling, opening his mouth to say my name, to apologize. But pride or shame or pure stubbornness took over. He turned sharply on his heel, grabbed his coat from the hook, and stormed out the door, slamming it shut behind him with a sound that rattled the windows. I sat there in the darkness, the side of my face throbbing, my heart breaking into tiny, irreparable pieces. I told myself he would return. He would cool down, realize his mistake, and come back to hold me and say he was sorry. But he did not come back that night. Or the next chapter 5. Silence and lies. Days passed. Been a week, then 2. I learned from inquiries at the office that Kalen had been sent away on a business trip immediately following our argument, an urgent matter requiring travel far to the north. He had left in such haste he had not even sent word to me. Alone in our apartment, I went through what little remained of his things. I noticed he had taken only what he had bought for himself. His work tools, the books he had purchased before we met, the clothes he had bought with his very first wages. Everything we had chosen together, everything we had saved for or shared, was left exactly where it belonged. It felt like a final, cruel message. Only what I paid for is truly mine. You and everything we built. I leave it behind. I tried to reach him. I sent letters to his workplace that were returned unopened. I called and found his number changed. I waited outside the office building until security politely asked me to leave, saying he was not receiving visitors. Marnie was there, always there, smooth and composed. She told people I had been upset and unstable, that I had been making scenes. She whispered that I had likely decided to leave town to save face, that I was probably ashamed. But she was terrified. She knew that the moment Kalen returned and I spoke to him, her web of lies would unravel completely. She knew I was the only obstacle standing between her and the position, influence, and perhaps even the status of being the person closest to him. One afternoon, needing air and space to think, I walked out toward the cliffs, the same place where we had sat as teenagers, the place where he had asked me to be his. It was a remote spot, wild and beautiful, surrounded by tall grass and loose shale rock that slid easily underfoot. I didn't realize I was being followed until I heard footsteps behind me. It was Marnie. She looked different now, no polite smile, no soft words. Her face was tight with fear and determination. "You need to stop trying to find him," she said, blocking my path slightly. "You've had your time, but it's over. You're holding him back from everything he deserves. He deserves to know the truth about you. I replied, standing my ground. You lied to both of us. I did what was necessary, she snapped, stepping closer. He is going places. He needs someone who understands ambition and power, not a quiet little shadow like you. If you tell him everything, I lose everything. I won't let that happen. Then tell him yourself, I said, moving to step past her. I'm done being quiet. She grabbed my arm to stop me. I pulled away, and in the struggle, she shoved me hard against the loose edge of the cliffside path. My feet slipped. For a second, I scrabbled at the earth, trying to find a grip, but the soil gave way. I fell backward, rolling down the steep slope until I struck the rocks below, falling still dot. It was over in an instant. There was no pain that lasted, no long goodbye. Above me, Marty stood frozen, staring down. She called my name once, tentatively. When there was no answer, panic seized her. She looked around. No one came here this far out. There were no witnesses. If people thought I had simply vanished or run away, she would be safe. With trembling hands and a heart driven by pure survival instinct, she climbed down. She dragged my body into a narrow, deep fissure in the rock face nearby, an old geological crack hidden by thick brambles and earth, rarely visited by anyone. She covered me over with stones, dirt, and branches until there was nothing left to see but uneven ground and wild grass. She smoothed her clothes, wiped her hands, and walked back to the city, constructing a story where I had simply packed a bag and disappeared. When Kalen finally returned from his travels, full of regret and ready to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, he found the apartment quiet and empty of me. He searched everywhere. He asked neighbors, checked lodging houses, sent inquiries to nearby towns. Marnie was there to guide his search, or rather to mislead it. From what I heard, she told him gently, her eyes filled with manufactured sorrow. He was very hurt by your argument. He told a few people he needed to get far away to think. Someone said they saw him catching a coach heading toward the border. He likely wanted to start over where no one knew him. Kalen believed her. He wanted to believe that I was alive, somewhere living a life away from the coldness he had shown me. It was a painful hope, but it was hope nonetheless. Years began to pass. He never stopped looking. He never moved back into the apartment fully, but he kept the key. He kept everything exactly as it was. Plates in the cupboard, books stacked by the door, the blanket we shared folded neatly on the window seat. He became wealthy and respected, but he was hollow inside. He never loved anyone else. He remained distant, polite, but unreachable to everyone around him, carrying the heavy weight of the hand he had raised and the words he had spoken in anger. Marnie stayed by his side, indispensable and efficient, never pushing for more, never drawing attention to herself, always careful to ensure the truth remained buried deep in the earth. Chapter 6. Bones found in the hills. 5 years, 4 months, and 11 days had passed since that afternoon on the cliffs. A team from the Bramblehold Institute of Science was conducting a geological survey of the hills to map soil stability and rock formations. They dug small test pits and trenches along the slopes. One student, digging near the overgrown fissure, struck something pale and hard that was definitely not stone. Work stopped immediately. The local authorities were called, and the site was cordoned off. Careful excavation revealed human remains hidden deep within the crevice. There was no identification, no clothing left intact, only bones resting where they had been placed. For weeks the town held its breath while examinations were conducted. Dental records were compared. Items found nearby buttons, a buckle, fragments of a bag were traced. Finally, DNA samples were taken from personal items I had left behind in our preserved apartment. When the conclusion was officially drawn, the police went to Halewood Engineering to find Kalen. He was sitting at his large desk, papers spread out just as they used to be, though now he sat alone in a much larger room. When the officer spoke my name and told him where I'd been found all this time, he stood up slowly, his face draining of all color. But he left, he whispered, his voice cracking. He went away. Didn't he? There is no evidence of that, sir, the inspector replied gently. He never left Bramblehold. He was here all along. Everything he had believed for years crumbled into dust. The hope that I was living a new life somewhere far away vanished, replaced by the devastating truth. I had been waiting, hurt and confused, close enough for him to find me if he had known where to look. I had been gone before he even returned to say he was sorry. Kalen fell to his knees, gripping the edge of his desk, and wept great, heavy sobs that tore from his chest. Grief for the time lost, for the love he had neglected, for the fact that he had spent years searching for a ghost who had never left his home. As the investigation deepened, inconsistencies began to appear in the timeline. Witnesses recalled seeing Marnie near the cliffs that day. Her movements after my disappearance did not align with her own accounts. Notes and letters found in her files revealed a deep obsession and jealousy that she had carefully hidden. When she was brought in for questioning, her composure cracked instantly. Confronted with the evidence and the location where I was found, she broke down completely. She confessed to everything, the lies she had told to turn us against each other, the confrontation, the fall that she had not intended to be fatal, and the desperate act of hiding me to save herself from prison. She was arrested and charged. But justice moving through courts and paperwork was too slow for the pain that had now consumed Kaylin. Before she could be transferred to a holding facility, he arranged for her to be taken to an isolated warehouse on the edge of the industrial district. A place with thick walls and no neighbors dot there, he did not shout or rage. He was terrifyingly calm. He sat her down across from him and recounted every lie she had woven, every moment of doubt she had planted in my mind, every bit of loneliness and fear I had felt because of her. "You told him I didn't care?" Kaylin said, his voice low and deadly. "But you were the one who destroyed everything he cared about. You took a life that was full of light and you buried it in the dirt because you wanted what we had built." He made her understand the weight of what she had stolen. He made her feel the fear I must have felt, the confusion, the silence. He ensured she suffered for every moment she had let me be forgotten. He did not kill her. He refused to give her an easy escape, but he stripped away every bit of pride and arrogance she had worn for years. When he was finished, he led her out to the waiting police officers and handed over the full written confession she had made while speaking to him. She was taken away to face a lifetime behind bars, and he watched her go without a single flicker of pity. Chapter 7. Echoes in the empty room. That evening, Kaylin went back to Willow Lane. He unlocked the door to the apartment that had remained untouched for years. Dust lay lightly over the surfaces, but everything was exactly where we had left it. He walked to the window seat and sat down, the place where we had spent so many hours together. He looked out toward the sea, just as we used to. "I thought you walked away," he whispered into the quiet room, speaking to the empty air as if I sat beside him. "I thought you were angry and hurt and gone to find someone who would treat you better. I carried that pain alongside my regret, thinking you had decided I wasn't worth staying for." He swallowed hard, his throat tight. "But you never left, did you? You were waiting for me to come back and fix it. And I never found you?" I let the world get so loud and important that I forgot the only thing that actually mattered was you. I stopped seeing you, Ilian. I stopped listening. I thought that success and money and titles were the goals, but all I was really doing was building a wall between us. He reached out and ran his hand over the empty space beside him. "I hurt you. I was cold and distant and foolish. And in the end, the one time I raised my hand against you, it was the last time I ever saw you. I will carry that guilt until my very last breath." In the days that followed, he arranged for me to be laid to rest in the cemetery overlooking the water, near the bench where we had first promised each other our future. He brought white lily, my favorite flowers, and visited every single day. Kaylin lived the rest of his life quietly. He sold his stake in the company and used the money to establish shelters and support centers for young people, ensuring no one else felt unseen or unvalued. He spoke often of the lesson he had learned, that love is not something you build a foundation around. Love is the foundation itself. If you neglect it, everything else you build will crumble or stand empty. He kept the apartment on Willow Lane until the end. He would sit there in the fading light, talking to me, telling me about his days, saying he was sorry, saying he loved me over and over again, words that had been too few and far between in the later years of our life together. People who knew the story said it was a tragedy, and perhaps it was. It began as the softest, warmest kind of love, two boys growing side by side, dreaming of the future. But ambition and silence and lies turned it cold, hard, and painful. Yet sometimes when the wind blew gently off the ocean and the golden light of the setting sun slanted through the apartment windows, it felt less like an ending and more like a pause. Because love like that, love that starts in the innocence of youth and grows through every stage of life, does not vanish just because the world stops seeing it. It changes form. It becomes the wind that moves the grass, the light that touches the waves, the silence that feels like a hug. And somewhere beyond the mist and the rocks and the gray water, I was waiting. And one day, years later, when Kaylin finally closed his eyes for the last time, he found me there, young again, warm again, smiling, waiting to take his hand and lead him back to the beginning, where nothing was cold and nothing was forgotten. And we were just two boys with the whole beautiful world ahead of us.